Get strong.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, and welcome to this Terminator filled episode where we are covering a Netflix original known as Terminator Zero, which is made by Skydance and Production IG, which makes sense if you really think, if you know about their history and all that kind of yes. I'm your host for tonight, Isaac Wolf, and joining me today is Jamie. How's it going, Jamie?
I'm doing well, I'm doing good. I'm happy to be here, talk some Terminator with you, and yeah, I know it feels like the first anime that I've watched in a little bit. I don't know, it's getting busier and busier, but Terminator made it just in time for me.
I get it, I get it. And you had two previous recently posted that people seem to enjoy. The, that was a lot of fun to hear.
Yeah,
And your thoughts.
yeah, Anime YC was a lot of fun. I got to preview. I actually did get to see the first two episodes of Terminator actually, but at that point I was super tired and I was like, you could tell I was tired, so I'm like, well, edit that clip. But I also got to see Ranma one half and Danadan, the first episodes of those two. The remake for Ranma, I should say. And those are really fun. So, if you haven't heard, definitely check out the previews here on the channel. And join the hype because I definitely will be watching those two when they come out.
And it will be pure insanity and some fun fluff comedy, if which is one way to describe it, I imagine.
Yeah,
And
there were definitely, Isaac has famously on the channel said many times that Danganronpa is an insane manga, insane story to follow. And I feel like I didn't fully understand until I watched that first episode. I'm like, oh, okay, I see what he means now. But I actually really like Danganronpa, and they were selling the first volume at Anime NYC, so I actually picked that up and I read that. And now I forget what chapter I'm up to because I resubscribed to Shonen Jump so I could keep reading. So I really like it.
nice,
It's really
nice. I am reading through Manga Plus, and that's well, it's a blast. And well, what can I say? And did you notice Japanese voice? Did you see? I can't recall. Did you watch it in Japanese or was it dub or sub?
it was dubbed English dub.
Okay, okay, because Granny in the sub is none other than Luffy's voice actor, which will be kind of hilarious. Not gonna lie.
Oh wow, interesting.
So, but anyway, like I said at the beginning, we are going to talk about Terminator Zero. And, well, before we start with the Terminator Zero part, I feel like we should talk about the history of, or should I say, our history with the Terminator franchise. And let's start with you, Jamie.
Yeah, I watched the first Terminator. It was a long time ago in a galaxy far away, it feels like. I had to have been maybe 10, 11 ish. Basically, too young to see the Terminator at that point because it was horrifying for me. Um, and then I've seen the second movie. Anything else after that, just probably clips here and there, but I've seen the first two movies. And also went on the ride at Universal multiple times. That's one of the best experiences there, or at least it was. If it's bad now, that's not on me. Okay, that Universal step up. But yeah, that's my connection to the Terminator franchise.
Well, for me, I think I saw the first Terminator when I was like 8 or 9.
Wow.
If
Were you scared by
but
it like I was?
no, I was just robot, cool. Kind of like I was. I have never been. I have never really been a scary cat for movies like that. If
Mm.
but I jump from a jump scare sometimes. That I will admit. For example, there was a jump scare in Alien Romulus that got me. But anyway, I have seen every one of the movies. Honest, actually, it's I haven't seen the TV show because it's a TV show and I don't have the time to watch everything. But
Mhm.
I do believe I saw the two last, even in going so far to even seeing in theaters because a friend wanted to see it with me. And they're fine. The third movie is. Eh, I know Terminator fans hates the latest one for XYZ, but honestly, the third one is the worst in my book. But
Mm.
I digress.
I'm trying to remember what happened in the latest one. Like I might have seen it, but I don't know. Nothing sticks more in my head when I think of Terminator. I think of like the first one for sure.
It's the one where, well, there is a certain event that people that are hardcore Terminator fan hates in the beginning. I'm not gonna say if you do want to watch it, but you will probably understand what it is if you ever watch it.
Mm.
But this Terminator anime, known as Terminator Zero, is starting off with another main character, not Sarah Connor as many might have suspected. And I will actually admit, during my viewing of this, I'm I was sort of like confused if this was a how should I put it uh,
Like
a
a
new
prequel.
content, yeah, a reboot slash
Okay.
new continuity or something. Considering I don't know if you remember, but in sort of like that around that age, the world wasn't as technological as the world was in 1997 in this anime. So it was just I was just okay. Is this a reboot? Is this a remake? Is this something else like a what if from Star Wars?
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah, they
from
I'm trying to remember his name. I think it's Matt Thompson. It was the producer for Terminator Zero. I might be mistaken on that. I know he's higher up in the production, and he was at Anime NYC at the panel before we well, he spoke before and after the screening. And one of the things he was saying to the audience was kind of how this story isn't trying to like take away from any of the other like Terminator movies or TV shows or anything like that. It's just like creating its own, like making its own space in the Terminator world. So I think it's supposed to be complementary to other Terminator projects and not necessarily try to like retcon anything. But then the other interesting part, like you mentioned at the beginning, Isaac, is the fact that the main character is not Sarah Connor. It's Echo, who is like a completely original character to Terminator Zero, at least as far as I can remember. Um,
she haven't been in any of the movies as far as I can recall. So
yeah. And one of the interesting things about her is that she's of like Japanese heritage, and this Terminator story takes place in Japan. And so he was talking about, like, the stereotypical Terminator is like this white dude who's like in America. And with like Terminator Zero, it would be one of the main objectives of Terminators is to like not stick out, just to blend in with everybody else. Which I don't know if this Terminator would, because he looked crazy to me. He looked crazy, but
Yeah.
I guess he did look Japanese. I don't know. I don't know if that's offensive to say. He looked crazy, but
Um,
he wanted the Terminator to also be Japanese, so that way it's like, you're not gonna, if it's a white dude walking around Japan, um, I don't know if you would necessarily stick out like a sore thumb, but you're definitely not blending in. I'll say that for sure. So I thought that was actually a really interesting kind of commentary there. And it also affects the way that, the Terminator goes about terminating people, I guess. Because in Japan they don't have as much access to weapons, and they even mentioned this in the show. Like, Echo asks, what is her name? It starts with the M, I think.
do you talking about the
The babysitter.
babysitter,
Yeah,
Misaki?
Misaki. Yeah, Echo asks Misaki like where she can find guns, so that way they can protect themselves from the Terminator. And she's like, "What are you talking about? Like, we're in Japan. Where would you find a gun?" And then she's like, "Ah, like what am I supposed to do?" So I feel like that alone, just changing up the setting, like completely changes a lot of what we have typically come to know about the Terminator. And also, even though the time period is, I guess, the same between a lot of the different projects, with it being like in the like late 1900s, I guess I'll say.
It was 97.
Yeah, 97, but I'm sure the other ones are in the 80s, whatever. But yeah, I thought it was interesting what they did with that, and they definitely, I think, put their own spin on the Terminator story.
Which is kind of refreshing because one of the things I was scared about when I heard about this, which it's while there is always the whole thing about we need to play it safe, just because nostalgia, or is the fans going to be are the fans going to be accepting of there is no XYZ?
Mhm.
And I do feel like they did a really good job with how they could quote unquote get away with it. If you really think about it, they talked with when they have Aiko and Aiko, the main character, and the prophets talking, and they talked about timelines. So this could just be a specific timeline. And then we have Malcolm talking and we had Michael talking with the Kokoro about,
Hmm.
well, timelines. So then it just, okay, this is just a pocket within the Terminator mythology, which is something I think was kind of really good, or at least in my book. Uh, and
Yeah.
and and I know that this might sound like I said the same thing to my when I said when I had seen Alien Romulus. I like the fact that they went out of their way to have a female lead again. This that is something that should be a staple of the franchise. I dare argue you can have, or should I say, a female lead that goes back in time to stop it all. That just feels like a staple in my book.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely I'm trying to think out of all the Terminator movies, like how many starred Sarah Connor versus John Connor that I've seen. I feel like Sarah Connor played a big part in one and two, from what I remember. The most recent one, no freaking clue. I feel
Yeah,
like was the main character, and this is spoilers for the most recent Terminator, but that movie, I think it came out many years ago at this point. If you were gonna watch it, you probably already see it. But I think the most recent Terminator movie had whoever Sarah Connor marries or something, or like the father of John Connor, like she was saving him. I can't fully remember though. I honestly don't.
As far as I can remember, the only one that didn't really have a quote unquote theme, it was a male lead. It was probably third or in the third and Salvation, but that's because it was following John Connor, which is okay. That makes sense. I mean, that's um, that makes the whole thing make sense at least, and not just
Mhm.
creating something new. In my
Yeah,
book, at least.
yeah, I agree.
But anyway, what are your thoughts? I think we could do something spoiler related afterwards. But was there anything that? How did you like it? So overall, when it comes to Terminator Zero.
You know, I would say that I liked it pretty well. Um, out of walking out of Anime NYC, watching like the first two episodes, even with that was the only screening where I saw two episodes, all the other screenings were one. I felt like I liked Terminator Zero the least. And the reason for that, well, one, I'm not like super attached to the Terminator franchise, as you guys can probably tell. And then two, I felt like early on in the story, I didn't really understand Echo really as a character. It felt like, we saw her kicking Terminator butt. That was cool. And then she gets her mission. She gets sent to 1970s Japan, and now she has to go save this guy. And so we didn't really know much about her, how she felt about this situation, really, other than like her friends, like bad things were going on there. So she felt bad about that and was hoping to try and help, like complete the mission at least. Um, but outside of that, I was like, I don't know. I don't know who, like, I don't know this person that we're following. And I felt like I was starting to get to know some of the other side characters a little bit better. Now, seeing the whole series, I feel like Echo does get rounded out as a character. I feel like it comes a little late, but it gets rounded out. So that first concern was addressed. And then there are some other characters that I actually started to dislike as we kept watching. Malcolm was like, he was okay. Sometimes he would do stuff, and I'm just like, why would you do that? And then his son starts with a
Kenta.
Kenta. Yeah, Kenta sucks. Kenta's horrible. I absolutely did not like him at one point in the show.
I
Like,
did
oh
not
my
like
god,
him either. Not
like
gonna
why
lie.
does he suck so much? It was crazy. Um, I feel like who really shined in this show is definitely Misaki. Misaki was definitely the highlight for me. Her development, her story. I actually feel like that story was pretty well told for the most part. Um, and I also liked how they tried to add like I guess greater sci-fi themes to Terminator, because I feel like they don't really get into the weeds about all of that. It's just like Skynet bad, Terminator bad, like run away. And that's all we get. But this definitely digs into more of like the mythos of Terminator and some of the ask some of those morality questions, which I think is especially relevant with all the like AI ethics, like those kind of questions that are popping up today. Um, but I don't feel that it was executed super well. Like it kind of felt, I don't know. I didn't feel like it tied into the entire story. It was more just like a moment for Malcolm to sit in this room with Kokoro and just like nerd out and talk about all this existential stuff. Like, meanwhile, everybody else is like fighting for their lives, which again adds to why I'm kind of like I don't dislike Malcolm, but I also don't like Malcolm either. And that's one of the reasons for that. So I walked out of the series ultimately liking it. I don't know if it's something that I will revisit in the future, but I think for people that really enjoy the Terminator franchise, those people seem to really like this. So I don't know. What's your perspective on this, Isaac? How did you feel about the show?
I actually liked it, but I have to agree with you, but that I have some major gripes with it, and that's the whole. How should I put it? It's mostly the talk about with between Malcolm and Corco. Was it
I have no
the
idea. We'll go with that.
Corco, the A- AI that they created? And the
Yeah.
reason for that is I get what they are saying, and uh, I do agree that you should have something like that in a Terminator story,
Hmm.
but it came out kind of flat, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it was horrible. I've seen worse attempt at being as philosophical and all that jazz in
Yeah.
other stories, but it just you needed some more breathing room. It just felt weird that he was, like you said, stuck for Lord knows how long, while everything else went on. I
Yeah.
mean, when we go to the spoiler territory, I can mention one thing, but that's for later in the video. But as a whole, I did enjoy it. I know that my dad wants to try and get a chance to watch at some point. Being 8 episodes and like 30 minutes long, it's well a perfect amount if you just want something short to watch through the week.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah. It's a
and
pretty quick watch.
we can take that in the spoiler territory, but I do wonder if they are really going to be on a one-off or they are going to do a sequel with this. The more I think about it,
A one-off or a sequel from Terminator Zero? I could see it. I mean, they towards the end of the series, they did kind of leave some seeds where you could possibly continue the story or kind of see, I guess, how we got to this point, kind of thing. Or they could just like do something completely different where this story takes place in like 1970s Japan. Maybe we have a different story that it takes place in the future and it's just like unconnected characters, or maybe even it could also still take place in the 1970s and just follow a different family and their like connections
1990s,
to, oh, say that again.
1997.
1997. Yeah, you could do that. Um, they could do one that goes back to America and see, because I think they were saying at the beginning, I don't know if this is spoilers or not, but basically Skynet is already a thing. It exists. It's been active, so they could go back to when Skynet was launched and kind of how that all came to be. So there's a lot that they could do there if they wanted to continue to like tell the a continuation of the story or like break off and do a split of the story.
Yeah, it will. I feel like we want to go to more details about it, considering I don't know how to feel about the ending. That's why. But do you feel like going through spoilers now?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do it.
And first off, if you haven't seen it and if you don't want spoilers, this is the time to turn off the video and go and revisit it while and you have watched it. And for those that have watched it, well, hang on, and we talked about spoilers now. And I can start with this. When didn't it feel like a bit? I should put it anticlimactic. I don't know. Anticlimactic is not the right term, but it just felt like it was more than just a few minutes when he had to do the decision about activate Kokoro when they said, "Oh, it's going to land in a few minutes," and then just do it. And at the worst, you're going to die anyway. So, or was that just me because it took too long? If you catch my drift.
Yeah, there were a bunch of different moments. So you mean when Malcolm was deciding whether or not to turn on Kokoro, or are you talking about Kenta?
And Kokoro.
Or
You
yeah,
talk
but
about
was it Malcolm, like, I guess sending Kokoro, like bringing her onto the web or whatever, or telling
yes,
her?
he was working and was in a it's now or never situation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I see what you're saying now. To your point, it was kind of like, why would you not, if we're about to be bombed right now, why would you not do something that could possibly save us versus just let everybody die? And honestly, it makes you ask that question even more, because the visions that Malcolm has, it looks like him and his kids are like gathered together as a nuclear bombing is happening. So it
exactly.
seems like if that's the thing that he's so afraid of, why isn't this decision to turn Kokoro on easy? That, and I felt like uh, it was a lot of episodes of the back and forth. Should I do it? Should I not do it? And then like kind of giving us some background into like Terminator and the morality around it and the ethics and all of that. And I feel like it could have been executed a little bit better, maybe with like a different scenario or something. Because if it's life or death, and you have like possibly the only option to save everybody, I don't see why you wouldn't do it. At least in the short term, and then like long term, you try and figure out something else. But yeah, it was a very prolonged kind of decision.
It felt like this will sound weird considering I have defended it all, but this felt like how people feel with the current One Piece anime in some extent, with how they dragged it on. Honestly,
Mm.
sure, I get that they did it for some form of suspense and all that, yes, but you can handle that better. But also, the reason why I don't know about you, but I didn't really like Kenta from the start. And it just started getting worse after he demanded to look at the robot cat, which is just why? You know that you're going to return it. You can't just dissect it then. So
You know,
even even that part made no. I mean, I get he is curious about robotics and all, but he should
yeah.
realize that no, we can't return it if we do that.
Yeah, he definitely seemed old enough to know that he shouldn't have been doing that. I also like, I don't know if I blame Kenta more than Misaki for, I guess, allowing them to open it up in the first place, because she
That's
also
a good
knew
point.
that they shouldn't have opened it up, because she needed to return it, because Malcolm said, like, I don't want any robotics in my house. So I partially put the blame on Misaki. Kenta does suck. You're right. He was kind of like sucking from the beginning, but I'm like, oh, maybe they're gonna do one of those things where he seems like a bad kid, and they turn it around. That never happened for me. They took out the cat robot, and they're playing with it, and then Kenta starts kicking it, and I'm like, It's not a real cat, but it's acting like a cat. You're supposed to treat it like a real pet, and he's just like kicking it. And the cat is like making noises as if it hurts because it's supposed to be imitating what a real cat would do. And it's like, why would you do this? Like, what? I don't know. I get some kids, they just like to push boundaries and will do things like that, but that doesn't make it that much better to watch the that kind of stuff happen. So yeah, Kenta kind of sucks. And then his yeah, they're all related. His little sister, he kept like bothering her and just generally being annoying. I don't know if we were supposed to see like any kind of bright side to Kenta, but to then find out at the end that he was going to play a crucial role in like what dooming the planet or saving the planet, I was like, oh god, we're dead. I like, if it's
I
up to Kenta, everything's over. You suck.
and it honestly, his character doesn't really make sense if you really think about it. He likes to build robots and do stuff with and do similar stuff like that, but he doesn't trust robots, which is just, huh?
uh
Eh,
yeah, that's a little weird. I would say that I guess he kind of uh favors his dad in that way, where Malcolm is a very talented robot maker, I guess, scientist, whatever, engineer. He's a very talented engineer. Um, but I guess his distrust is not necessarily towards robots in general, but it's more towards like Skynet and Skynet's ability to like connect to all these different robots. So I guess Kenta kind of inherited that fear slash suspicion about robots, but he also inherited the like curiosity towards robots as well. So the way that those two things come together does feel a little weird, I guess. Because I think what would have been I don't know. I was gonna say what would have been interesting is if they had a robot companion, because then you could see, does he turn on them or not. But then Masaki was kind of that robot companion being an
yeah,
android, and you can kind of see like Kenta, he definitely started treating her differently when she found out that she's android, as did Kenta and the other brother. But I think Kenta is also really a really malleable character, where at the end of the day, even though Masaki's a robot, like she's also a parental figure in her life, even more dominant than Malcolm, his dad, just because Malcolm is so absorbed in his work that family kind of takes a backseat. So he does value her opinion, and will kind of listen to her within reason. So I think that's why he was able to be like convinced by the other brother to like go. I don't think he ever apologized to Misaki for saying all of the kind of like rude things that he said, but he did try to show in some way that he was sorry and that he realized what he said was offensive. um, I think some of that definitely gets thrown out of the water in other situations, but there are moments where you can see Kenta um, being empathetic, but I don't think that there are enough of those.
speaking of Kenta and his father, what was the point of him seeing himself in the mirror and looking like a younger version of his dad? I didn't get it. Did they even follow up with that in the season?
I think I think it's like foreshadowing for that last episode when the Terminator says like, oh, like you in the future, like I came here from the future because I was sent by you, like the older version of you or whatever. I think it was like trying to make a connection to that, and also alluding that Kenta would kind of follow his father's footsteps and be kind of like the forefather of something as far as the advancement of like AI or robotics or whatever it might be. Um, but I also thought it could have been like I felt like Kenta was pushing people away a lot towards the end, and Malcolm, definitely does that. So he's kind of uh, following in his father's footsteps in a different way too. Or it could have just been artsy. Who knows? Who knows?
I mean, it's production IG, so I can see it both ways. But also, I have to ask then, speaking of Misaki, what did you think about the whole twist that she was a robot at the end, and how
um,
and at the level of the type of robot that she was?
I think there's layers to it. I was never really surprised that she was an android because I think it was like in the first episode she cuts herself and she doesn't really bleed, or at least I don't think she bleeds. But either way, I noticed that she thought something weird of it, like she got cut and nothing happened. Then she started acting weird and was like sitting in her room and like staying in the bathroom for a long time. So I figured, oh, she's probably Android. She's probably Android, and she's like in denial as to what is actually happening. But then to have, I guess, the story of how she got there in the first place, I thought that was probably the best part of the show. I really liked the reveal that she's like the first. I don't know if she was the first android or if I guess she was just the first android that Malcolm had made. But either way, I think her and Malcolm's story in that way was actually really interesting, and it almost made me like I don't know, I get surprised that they weren't closer. And then we find out that Malcolm takes out like Masaki's memory chip to make Kokoro work. And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense why they don't have like a really close relationship. But then it started to make me question Kokoro a little bit. Because like if they use Misaki's memory chip to activate Kokoro, I'm like none of Misaki's like memories, personality, like nothing was inherited into Kokoro at all.
That's a good point.
I'm like, I don't think that they were similar characters at all, but I don't know. I thought that was weird. Um, the overall Misaki story I liked the most, and that was my favorite part of the show. I really liked. I don't know. I felt like there was like kind of three different reveals. I guess the fact that she was an android, the fact that she's from the future, and the fact that she's technically like the mother of Kokoro. I think those last two reveals were really interesting for me, and I enjoyed those.
Honestly, it was to a point that I don't know if it was just me over analyzing the whole thing, but when they revealed that he wasn't someone in the present, but he was something in the future, and he created her in the future, all that jazz, and they behaved the way that he did when he created her, I was just, are she the mother and they created the kids together? And
Yeah, I had that
they had a
thought.
and the idea of them having the dead mother was just a memory that they programmed for some reasons,
Mm.
which which I could have seen in a Terminator movie slash series. Not gonna lie, but then it turns out that no, it was she was just his robot at the beginning. But like I said, I could have seen that. What's the word? I could have seen that twist too.
Mm.
So, and I have to say that it. Speaking of twists and all that, yes, I didn't hate it because, well, it could be a nod for the previous, sort of like a nod for the earlier movies. But the fact that Aiko was Malcolm's mother, it came out of nowhere, and I missed. What was the point of that? Was that just a callback or something?
You know, I started to have a suspicion that might be the case, because like I was saying at the beginning, I was really wondering why she was here. I'm like, well, not wondering why she was there, but just like, who is this person, like, is she not she didn't feel robotic like a Terminator to me, but she almost felt like she was serving the same purpose of like, I'm going to a different time period to do X so that I can accomplish Y. I didn't feel like she was a complete character for a good bit of the show, until we got a little bit further background. But the thing that tipped me off was and granted, this was kind of later on, but it was before the reveal. When they had the flashback of Malcolm being born, we see that same redheaded lady that Aiko was friends with. And I was like, wait, wait a minute. Aiko never talked about having any children. Like, how would that have happened? I don't know. I'm like, maybe it happened in the future. But then I started to second guess myself, because they said that before Aiko traveled back to the past, when she was talking with her friend, she was like, yeah, this is going to be a one-way trip. Like, we can't bring you back here. And obviously, like, the future is like hundreds, if not thousands of years ahead. So I'm like, oh, there's no way that she would get back there. So actually, yeah, I still begs the question, how is she going to get back there? And I guess they made another time machine or something like that. But that's why I started psyching myself out, because I'm like, oh, there's no way that she would have made it back to the future, because it was a one-way trip. But it did start to kind of feel like, oh, this is Aiko's purpose. This is why she's here, because she's Malcolm's mother. So do I feel like they communicated that well and kind of like foreshadowed it enough? I don't think so. If that redheaded lady was not in the cutscene of him giving birth, or not cutscene, this isn't a game. If she wasn't in the scene of Malcolm being born, I never would have guessed it. I never would have guessed it. So they could have done a little bit more to kind of set us up, if that's what the intention was. If they wanted it to just be like, oh, this is a fact, then they accomplished that. It was indeed a fact that we learned at the end of the show.
Speculation here.
Mm-hmm.
What if this is not the first time she has technically jumped back in time, and the prophet that we see at the start is her from the past, while that timeline's version of her was not born yet. And the reason why she was the one going back in time was because she knew that it was her mission to turn back in time. But but again, if she knew that, what was the purpose of? Shouldn't she have waited before Malcolm was born?
That's some good speculation, because at the beginning of the show, when she was talking to the prophet, or actually, I think this was like midway through the show where they showed this conversation that happened in the future. She was talking to the prophet, and I was like, this prophet kind of feels like it could be Aiko from the future. I don't know how it would have happened, but I kind of had that same feeling as well. But then it does beg the question, like, how are there two different echoes from two different time periods? I guess, well, they did say, like, when you leave your timeline, you're in like a completely different timeline. So I guess that's how that could have happened. See, I feel like at this show, do you feel like the show expanded on like the timeline idea that well? Because I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what they did. I feel like they talked a lot about the morality of, should we save humanity? Is humanity worth saving? Versus like the timeline was like the first sentence in the paragraph, and then the rest of the paragraph was morality for me. Like I'm not sure I understand the timeline stuff now that I'm thinking about it more deeply.
Now I have thought about something. Maybe his mother, um, Malcolm's mother, is Aiko that went back in the past. She met him later down the line, and that's why he was born there. So he had the grown adult as a mother, whereas it's still the young kid or whatever you want to call it were not the mother from the start, which begs the. You get what I mean.
So you're saying that maybe there was a different Echo that was pregnant and came back to the past, and maybe something happened to her. I don't know. And that's how our Echo meets a young Malcolm.
Kinda.
I don't know.
The more I think about it, this whole timeline makes no sense. At least
I,
in the first one, no, not even the first one makes no sense because then that means that Terminator is a weird franchise.
it's definitely it makes you think. It makes you think. That is for sure. I don't know. Yeah, I don't think I really thought
But
about these things that much before.
but, but I have to say, I do. Now begs the question of did they set up for a sequel or is this just going to be a one-off? Because they pretty much spoke about how Kuroko is now defending Japan
Hmm.
from Skynet. Is this going to be a world where, well, Kuroko is fighting Skynet for the people, and or is we are just going to be left ambiguous? Will humanity survive to an extent thanks to Kuroko, or will they fall to Skynet? Or are we doing a continuation where we actually see a Terminator story ending up in a positive light?
You know,
Considering no Terminator, as far as I can know, have never really ended positive.
I guess two things about that. Well, the first thing, Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator, he came back to protect like John and Sarah Connor in the second movie, third movie. I
Yes,
don't know. So that was kind of, I thought that was kind of positive. I don't know. I thought it was positive at least.
I
But
will have to, I will have to say this. This
yeah,
is a nitpick, but this is a disappointment for me. It don't uh, drags it down with a point or something, but I'm disappointed that the Terminator didn't say, "I'll be back at the police station." That would have
uh,
been a fun nod.
yeah, that would have been cool. But I actually, when you were mentioning like, I guess how this will all play out, if Kokoro will be like a protector of humanity, or at some point down the line, will she turn? I also, the other thing question I had about this show, like once Kokoro was online, like she started controlling a bunch of the robots and was like killing people. And so I don't know how that, I don't know, because like the robots stopped killing people after a while, but as a human, how are you then going to just be like, oh, they're cool now? Like I trust the robots. Like I feel like that was the other thing that confused me, because when Kokoro made those other robots start attacking humans, or at least like, rounding them up, and then the rounding ones died. So they were still technically attacking humans. Um, like, isn't this what Malcolm feared was going to happen? Like the shutdown and everything like that. I think after that you're at a point of no return. Like, how am I supposed to trust that the robots are good after they just like shot and killed Bob for being angry? Like I don't know. That was also kind of weird to me. Like how am I supposed to trust this world full of robots now? But I think Kokoro will be good for maybe 100 years or so. It depends on how the family continues to interact with Kokoro, if they're like hands off, Kokoro could maybe be like, this isn't the world that Malcolm would have fought for in like a century or something, and then she might try and burn it all down. Or if the family keeps in touch and like reminds her of Malcolm and like the things that are good about humanity, excuse me, then I think she can continue to be good. But that's something that they could explore in a sequel for sure. What happens next? And how
My
Malcolm.
guess, my guess about why she quote unquote killed Inhumans is with the whole idea of if I need to be able to control people, so they just do as I say, and let me just say, they realize I can help them, quote
Mhm.
unquote. And if she didn't attack the humans and all that, yes, they would just never listen to her. I think she thought as a means of control and help by fear,
Yeah,
which is kind of counterproductive, I know, but that's the only way I can see it makes sense, considering when she saw the true humanity, whatever you want to call it, she changed her mind.
right.
That's why I feel like the first idea was controlled by fear, and so she could help out where instead of them just going out and attack Skynet by themselves or something. I don't know.
There is a point to that where it's like, if I'm Kokoro, it's like I'm maintaining order for all the humans. Anybody who steps outside of that is not only threatening me, they're threatening you because they're messing up the order of things. So if I get rid of them, we're cool again. But as a human, you're going to be like, people are going to be disorderly. They're going to be rowdy. That doesn't mean that they need to die. So then that's where I think the mistrust gets built. And you can definitely see this just like in world history or maybe even in like communities, especially communities in America where people try to exert their power. I won't go so far as to say use fear to control people, but definitely there are some manipulative practices. And then I don't know, it can't be expected for people to completely like trust that entity anymore. I think that's completely removed. Like even if it wasn't a not honestly, it's the violence that pushes it over the edge because I think people are willing to take a lot of crap and be suppressed in so many different ways. But as soon as like violence is brought into that equation and you realize like, oh, I could die for whatever reason that they come up with, if they just justify it as, oh, they were disorderly, like people start to easily rebel against that. So that's where I'm like, Kokoro having access to centuries, like thousands of years of knowledge about humans, knowledge about like our patterns, the way that we operate. Like I felt like she should have seen that and not tried to just kill people with the justification of, oh, we're maintaining our order. We eliminated all the disorderly people, the people that could bring bad stuff to us, and so we're cool now because that's just not how it works. That's just not how it works at all. But I don't know.
Yeah,
That was an odd kind of way to
but
end the show for me.
yeah, I can agree on that. But I can I can see the reason of she's saying the humanity where Malcolm is kind of sacrificing himself to save his kids. That at least kind of makes sense for me because then they show, oh, he just doesn't want to use the machinery to be a weapon. He can allow himself to. He's he is brave enough to go on his own to protect his kids and not just stand there and just look at nothing. Because if he never run away and try and help his kids, I don't think Kuroko had turned good or whatever you want to call it. If I'm being
Yeah,
completely frank.
I agree that Malcolm's sacrifice did show. I can't remember if it's Kokoro or Koroko. I don't know. In any case,
Kokoro.
it showed Kokoro the good side of humanity, but at that same time, it felt like an unnecessary sacrifice for me, and I'll tell you why. I don't remember the exact scene, but I do remember that I want to say he sacrificed himself because either Misaki was in danger or Aiko was in danger. Like Kenta was fine. The other two kids were with Malcolm inside of the AI room, the like sphere that was locked down, and he left the sphere not to grab Kenta and bring him to safety, but to sacrifice himself in a situation where I don't remember it being like oh we need Malcolm, like the two best fighters were already out there. Malcolm is not going to help in any situation, so it
But
I don't
that's honestly kind of the point, because she knew that he wasn't a fighter yet. He went along to try and help out, and that's why I think it works. If he were just a fighter that could easily defend himself as well, it wouldn't have the same effect. But I do agree with you on the logical sense that he should realize the two best fighters are there.
well
But
it's
I
not
can
even that for me. It's the fact that as far as I remember, Kenta was not in any immediate danger when he went out there. It was either Masaki or Echo. And as a father, I feel like, these two women, especially Masaki, very important to him. But ultimately, Masaki, he could build another Masaki. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to diminish her at all, but at the same time, it's like she is an android. She is not his flesh and blood. His priority is Kenta at that moment, and Kenta, he was doing okay. He could have just brought Kenta in and he would have been alive. I That's why I'm like he sacrificing himself for it was probably Echo because Echo is his mother, so I guess that kind of makes sense in a way. Even though he wasn't really treating her as such, which was also a little, I don't know. But it just felt like it happened because it needed to happen, I guess, in order to get Kokoro to like see the good of humanity with this sacrifice. Um, it felt unnatural to me, I guess, is what I'm trying to boil it down to.
I can say that I probably would have done the same if I were in his shoes, but I
Sacrifice
digress.
yourself for some other lady that not yourself.
No, then help. No, no, I mean that stopping the threat that would probably kill my kids and all that jazz.
See,
Even though I
if Kenta was the one that was about to die, I would agree. But I don't think it was Kenta. I think it was somebody else. So that's why, and this will be the last time I bring it up. He took his children's father out of their lives to sacrifice himself for either a robot or some lady that either he was pretending he didn't know or he just didn't know her.
okay, fair
That's
enough.
where I'm at. I'm like, why would you do that? I don't know. But maybe I'm misremembering. I'll have to watch it again. But I see your point. It's definitely as a father you would expect him to do whatever is necessary to save his children, including, if it came down to it, making a sacrifice for them. But that is not how I felt that went down.
So, but with all that said, is there anything else you want to point out before we rounding up this episode?
um No, yeah, I think we said everything that could possibly be said. Honestly, more than I imagined we would say. It was a really good conversation here. I guess I just put the question back to you all, the viewers and the people watching. Whether you have seen it or you're being a naughty viewer and you watched this before or you watched the series. I guess just what are your general thoughts about Terminator Zero, and do you want to see more? Especially, you watch this and then you've come back into the comments after seeing the Terminator Zero. Do you want to see more? And are you on the side of like, oh, I really love this? 'Cause I think this show's been really polarizing. A lot of people seem to really like it, and then there's the other side that's just like, I don't see what you guys are talking about. Did we watch the same show? I don't know. I'm definitely, I would like to say I'm in the middle, but kind of leaning towards I don't see it. I don't quite see it, I guess. I did have fun with it though. So yeah, I'm just curious what you guys think. Um, and yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the bell, all of that. Liking the videos, it helps us get to more people like you so we can have an even bigger conversation and just hear everybody's different opinions, which I always love. And subscribing, you're gonna get be one of the first people to see the next review or critique or whatever it might be. So you'll always be there first for the conversation and to claim that yes, you are in fact correct. Nobody can say it before you. That's the goal. That's the goal. But yeah,
Exactly. And I don't have anything else to say, more to say myself. And like Jamie said, please, hope you had a good listening to all this. And please, if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe and hit the bell. And with that said, everyone, have a good evening, and good morning, or whatever it is where you live. Hello, everyone.
bye. Don't get
Peace.
caught by Terminators.
And done.